You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. You just crossed over into the Twilight Zone. Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 Easter eggs and references you missed in the Twilight Zone 2019 so far. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're scouring the first 2 episodes of this reimagining of Rod Serling's iconic anthology series to find all the inside jokes, allusions, and Easter eggs that Jordan Peele has left for us to discover. Obviously, if you haven't watched the episodes yet, a spoiler alert is now in effect. Number 20, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
There's a man out there.
What?
Look, he's crawling on...
Starring a pre-Star Trek William Shatner, this iconic episode of the OG Twilight Zone follows a man who's so convinced he sees a gremlin outside his airplane that he goes to extreme measures to save himself and his fellow passengers. The rebooted Nightmare at 30,000 Feet follows a similar, albeit updated story where Adam Scott is also trying to save his plane, which he thinks is doomed thanks to a mysterious podcast. But there are even more detailed callbacks.
I know, honey. Remember what Dr. Cravat says. The past is the past.
The name Dr. Cravat is mentioned, appropriately referencing the actor who originally played the gremlin, Nick Cravat. And we bet you didn't miss the toy gremlin that washed up on shore after the plane crash. Definitely not a mistake. Number 19, The Mural at EDDY's. The Mural at EDDY's Comedy Club is a veritable treasure trove of classic Twilight Zone imagery. Did you notice how some of the faces seem kind of bizarre? These are direct visual references to the episode Eye of the Beholder, where an attractive woman is viewed as hideous by her shocking-looking counterparts, and The Masks, where a terrible family has their faces contorted by some darkly magic masks.
Oh, this is horrible. Oh, this is horrible, Father. I'm suffocating. I really am suffocating.
Also, so's that weird-looking comedy tragedy mask. And you know the ending where Samir is in the mural? This seems to allude to a few things, one of which is Rod Serling's other anthology series Night Gallery, which used pieces of art as a storytelling device and sometimes ended with people inside the paintings as well. Number 18, A Nice Place to Visit. By the way, the rest of that saying is, but I wouldn't want to live there. The storyline of this Serling-era Zone episode would be familiar to any fans of The Good Place.
Holy mother-forking shirt balls.
After being shot in a robbery gone wrong, Rocky wakes to find himself in a place where he can't lose and everything he wishes for comes true. Sounds like heaven, right?
Hey, how about that? I win again. Hey, Fats, come here. Come here. Put your money on the table, Fats. Right there, number 14 red. Rocky is hot tonight. Am I right, dolls?
Well, Rocky gets bored pretty fast, so he asks to go to the other place. But wait, turns out he was in hell this whole time. And this ultimately mirrors the journey Samir takes. After making his Faustian deal, he goes from enjoying his success to hating it, and finally looks for a way out.
I come up here and I try and make people laugh. Why? Because I want to spread joy? Because I want the world to be a better place? Nope.
Number 17, Canamit. Are you thirsty? Need a refreshing beverage that won't at all remind you of a deadly alien species? Well then, Canamit Lager is definitely not the answer to your problems.
We are here to help you.
The drink, which can be seen being consumed by EDDY in the episode The Comedian, is named after the race of aliens known as the Canamit in the original series episode To Serve Man. In the episode, the Canamits travel to Earth in search of a snack, or in less subtle terms, to devour all of the human race.
Please, Mr. Chambers, eat. We wouldn't want you to lose weight.
If only they had some tasty Canamit Lager to wash that meal down with. Number 16, Donner. Alright, so this one has many layers. Both episodes of the show released so far have had characters who share the last name Donner. The first of which, Joe Donner, features in the episode The Comedian.
Give it up for human piece of shit, Joe Donner.
Of course, paired with the pilot in Nightmare at 30,000 Feet, named Captain Donner, this must be a clear reference to one Richard Donner, the iconic filmmaker who directed a number of episodes of the original series.
The pond and on the
Hey,
television.
did the pilot just say his name was Captain Donner?
Of course, the Donner thing could also be a reference to the notorious Donner family, which may have foreshadowed Justin's unfortunate fate.
Get away from me! Get away!
Number 15. Podcasts. How could you possibly update Rod Serling's classic 20th century television show for the 21st century? Well, podcasting is surely one way.
Little did the passengers of Flight 1015 know, in less than an hour, their plane would disappear from flight control radar, never to be heard from again.
God.
The second episode of this revival series sees Adam Scott learning of his own disappearance through a podcast titled Enigmatique. What many viewers might not know is that actor Adam Scott is actually a podcaster himself, often co-hosting the show You Talkin' You Two to Me and its REM counterpart.
And all four of those guys are in the band. 1 second here. Sorry, 1 sec. 2.
Not only that, but regular podcast listeners may recognize the voice of Enigmatic as one Dan Carlin of hardcore history fame. Number 14. Lost.
Sorry I ever doubted you. Sorry I gave up on my faith in the island.
Given that the second episode of this show deals with a mysterious plane disturbance, people were quick on the trigger to try and spot any references to the TV show Lost they could. However, ironically, it's the episode The Comedian that cleverly gets in a quick nod to the influential TV series. During Samir's first stand-up routine, he briefly talks about an airplane crash in the Atlantic Ocean. Someone must have been having fun in the editing room, as we quickly cut to a man in the audience who looks an awful lot like John Locke.
Good news, we'll be getting you 89% of the way there. Bad news, that puts us at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
All the talk of oceanic flights in the next episode probably got the most diehard Lost fans pretty excited as well.
NGS 1015, this is Gander Oceanic Control. You are clear for transfer.
Not to mention that whole plane crash on a mysterious island where way too many people survive thing. Number 13. Peles Bracelet.
Next week, we show you the face of war, but the kind of portrait we venture to say you've never seen before.
Having to follow a legend like Rod Serling must be no simple feat. But Jordan Peele has more than showed us why he's perfect for the role. He's got the calm and cool manner of the OG host, but he's definitely doing his own thing.
In the end, Samir's final encore is a show you can only buy a ticket to in the Twilight Zone.
Not only is he respectfully paying homage to the sci-fi writer in his hosting chops, but Peele also threw in a slight nod to Serling's military roots. Toward the end of Nightmare at 30,000 Feet, Peele can be seen sporting a bracelet with a parachutist badge. An obvious reference to Serling's time in the 11th Airborne Division. Number 12. Flight history. Speaking of spending time in the air, the episode Nightmare at 30,000 Feet name drops a number of flight numbers. And knowing the vast lore of the Twilight Zone, you just know these had to mean something.
The crash of Trans-East Airlines Flight 22 out of Miami Beach. Or the anomaly of Global Airlines Flight 107 out of Buffalo.
The crash of Trans-East Airlines Flight 22 out of Miami Beach is the first mentioned, which is featured in the original series episode 22, where the titular flight explodes in midair. The second flight mentioned, Global Airlines Flight 107, is a clear reference to another original series episode titled The Arrival, which mysteriously lands successfully, but without a passenger on board.
You're gonna have to tell the passengers the luggage has been delayed. Some idiot let this plane take off without so much as an envelope in there.
Well, I'd be happy to, except for one thing.
What?
There aren't any passengers.
Creepy. Number 11. A World of His Own.
Her name is Mrs. Victoria West.
Here's an example of one Serling-era episode that's somehow referenced in both The Comedian and Nightmare at 30,000 Feet. The classic-era Season 1 finale, A World of His Own, is about a writer who's got a special tape recorder, which, if he uses it to record a description of a character, will cause that character to appear in flesh and blood.
She's walking across the hall.
The downside? If he destroys the tape, the person ceases to be. Of course, this is not only reminiscent of the spooky podcast-playing MP3 player found by Justin Sanderson, it is also clearly connected to Samir's godlike power to erase people from existence with his words.
I have this power, okay? I have this superpower.
Number 10. The Shining. In one of his final stand-up acts / monologue / rant / whatever you want to call it, Samir is ranting against seemingly every person he's ever met or even heard of. But one name drop stands out to us as a clear reference.
Torrance! Torrance! the Torrances!
The Torrances are, of course, the family at the center of Stephen King's The Shining.
I dreamed that I killed you and Danny.
But the reference goes even deeper. The final shot in the episode is a visual cue harkening back to Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of King's work. The reveal of Samir as a tuxedoed member of the audience in the mural on the wall is very similar to the shot of Jack Torrance as a tuxedoed member of the party crowd at the Overlook Hotel. Has Samir always been the comedian here? Number 9. Paul Grinstead. We'll get to Samir's long hit list later, but we just wanted to highlight one major one here. When our main character is researching his long list of lifelong enemies, he comes across the name Paul Grinstead. If this name sounds familiar, it appears in the original series episode Mirror Image, where the character Paul Grinstead comes to the aid of the main character Millicent Barnes, who is frightened after seeing her own doppelganger.
Incidentally, my name is Grinstead, Paul Grinstead. I'm from Binghamton.
This reference goes one step further when you realize that Jordan Peele used Mirror Image as a jumping-off point for his latest film, Us.
They look exactly like us.
Number 8. It's a Good Life.
Be dead. Gopher, you be dead.
We've all got some mortal enemies, but it's a little extreme to want to make them disappear forever. The comedian explores this idea by having stand-up comic Samir Wassan discover that he has the power to make people in his life disappear by telling jokes about them on stage.
Please give it going for the incredible Dee Scott, everyone!
Anyone who's watched through the original series, however, knows that this premise shares some similarities with the episode It's a Good Life. This episode from the show's 3rd season sees a 6-year-old boy with the ability to banish those who cross him to a desolate cornfield.
You do something to Bill Soames' dog? Did you, son?
I put him in the cornfield.
Jeez, makes you think twice about getting on anyone's bad side. Number 7. Samir's plane crash joke. Samir's having a bad set when he somehow fits a plane crash reference into a bit about the Second Amendment.
But imagine you're in a plane, and halfway through your journey, the pilot comes on and he's like, "Hey folks, classic good news, bad news."
Do you think in a show this well crafted that it's a coincidence the next episode deals with a plane crash? We're used to shows throwing back to previous episodes, and the new Twilight Zone does that in episode 2. But to throw forward is impressive. Did you spot that magazine featuring Jacob Tremblay? Expect that to come back. How about the Mission to Mars mural? From what we've seen, that will pop up again too. This is exactly the kind of shared universe world building that'll force us to binge rewatch the whole season again once it's done. Number 6. The XFiles. The Venn diagram of Twilight Zone fans who also like the X-Files must intersect pretty significantly. So this reference should be a real treat for fans of all things spooky. Glenn Morgan is currently serving as an executive producer on this Twilight Zone reboot, but he's probably best known for his contributions to the Final Destination film series.
This is your idea of a joke. It's not a joke! It's not a joke!
Which is very interesting considering the plane crash premonition narrative in the episode Nightmare at 30,000 Feet. He's also famous for his work on the X-Files. Aside from the Morgan connection, we also see Captain Donner played by actor Nicholas Lee, who played Alex Krycek on the X-Files, as well as some clear visual nods to the Fox series opening sequence. Number 5. Samir's contact list. Everyone knows that today, if you see a contact list on screen, you can almost guarantee the names are references to something. In the case of Samir's friends, these are all references to old Twilight Zone episodes. Alphabetically, we first see Al Cadwallader, whose name is a nod to the devil from the classic episode Escape Clause. Next, James Corey is the futuristic inmate at the center of another classic episode, The Lonely. Henry Corwin is taken from the 1985 Twilight Zone reboot ep Night of the Meek. Al Denton must be the titular Mr. Denton on Doomsday, and James Embry is the name of the pilot from King 9 Will Not Return.
All right now. Piece it together.
Whew, did we miss any? Number 4. Eddies. No, that protracted apostrophe talk was not just for all you grammar nerds out there. It had multiple hidden meanings. You just gotta know where to look.
Okay, you wanna talk about this?
The name eddy is a homophone for eddy, or EDDY, which according to the dictionary is, quote, a current of water or air running contrary to the main current, especially a circular current. Translation, it's kind of a synonym for whirlpool. And that mirrors Samir's story. Much like getting caught in a whirlpool, He gets caught up in the fame until ultimately the force is too much and he's drawn in. It also indicates that it's a cycle. It probably happened to J.C. Wheeler before Samir, and it'll probably happen to EDDY after him.
Wow, if you had any notes.
Number 3, no apostrophes.
Sounds so funny.
No apostrophes. Yeah, you might be the target audience. I don't get it.
Jeez, we guess we should have paid more attention to this conversation.
Because the club's called Eddie's, but you'd think that it would be Eddie's. But then this sign's saying that, no, it is actually Eddie's. It's just that we don't allow apostrophes, so now it's Eddie's.
That is funny.
Although it may have seemed like a red herring, the discussion of why Eddie's Comedy Club has no apostrophe in its sign was actually also alluding to the literary device known as apostrophe, and not the punctuation mark. At least according to Redditors like Gunther Foley. To put it simply, this figure of speech refers to any time a character talks directly to like an inanimate object or some character who's not actually in the scene with them. Like maybe some dear departed friend or family member, perhaps? That would certainly make sense here, given the subject matter of the episode. Number 2, Whipple. By this point, you gotta expect Jordan Peele & Co. will be referencing the original series at every chance they get. If you were watching Nightmare at 30,000 Feet and wondering if the Whipple device is just some funny name they came up with, we'll explain. Look to the original series episode The Brain Center at Whipple's for an answer to this one, where the owner of a manufacturing company titled Whipple fires all of his employees in favor of assembly machines. Here's hoping that Whipple becomes a sort of Tagruato-type fictional company that frequently reappears throughout the series.
Your company employs 34,827 men, added to 13 other major Whipple plants across the country.
Number 1, the ventriloquist dummy. Even if you're not pedophobic, you probably noticed that ventriloquist dummy in the dressing room at Eddie's Comedy Club. Well, this dummy is basically a celebrity in the Twilight Zone universe. Known alternatively as Willy or Caesar, he actually appeared in 2 episodes of the original series.
Hey, Garibaldi! Didn't you forget someone?
The Dummy and Caesar and Me. In both cases, that doll has a mind of its own. And while that doesn't seem to be the case here, we wouldn't put anything past that creepy face. In real life, Willy/Caesar has been living alongside other magic memorabilia in famed magician David Copperfield's museum in Las Vegas, and was lent to the show without charge on one condition. They reference Copperfield somehow in the episode.
I wanted to be the next Chris Rock, not evil David Copperfield.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.